Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And will the secretary please call the roll?
One moment, please. I'm pulling up the minute. Little too quick.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. Kathy Cavallari here. Frank Falcone
Here.
Tiffany DeMayo here. Chris Wilson,
Not here.
Connie
Stuckert
Stuckert,
here,
Vincent Gutierrez,
not here.
Melissa Cuniff. Not here.
Okay. Can we stand for a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is to approve our agenda for this evening. Is everybody willing to approve the agenda? Can I have a motion to approve? Frank so moves. Second. All in favor? Aye. The agenda is approved. We have no public, so there will be no public comment. Now we go to the minutes from our last meeting. Which was October 12th. Does anybody have any corrections to make to the minutes? I did notice one or two things. On page 2, item 7.1. Review of historic properties in the township and selection of limited number to address in 23. Kathy, I believe your name is misspelled. Pardon?
I'm
Well,
not
it
looking
says-
at it, I'm sorry.
It says Kathy Gouch.
Did I misspell that? I apologize.
That's my husband's name. My name's Cavalier.
It should be Cavalier.
Okay.
That's what I thought. And also, Frank Falcone should be listed on that subcommittee.
Okay. I will add that.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
7.1
Got
under
it.
new business.
No, it's on.
Kathy, do you want to be hyphenated or do you want to just Cavalier?
It's just Cavalier. It was
Sure.
hyphenated when my kids were young.
Okay, so we'll take off the other and so we need to
Go with
make that
the-
adjustment in the system, Steve.
Okay, any other additions or corrections? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I'll motion.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we move on to reports, and I'm really looking forward to this. The Historic Property Review Subcommittee. Here comes Chris. You're up here. Yes, you've been promoted.
Good thing.
Okay, the Historic Property Review Subcommittee. Kathy, are you going to report on that? Is Frank going to report on that? How do you
We
handle-
both will. We cover different areas on I'll just give an overview of what we did or what we're doing. So the first house for application for eligibility, we chose the Horace Lewis house, which we visited, and Frank did a report on that physical part of the house. I already had gathered the background information, so that I found out is that will come later, that when we have to discuss its eligibility publicly. So
Mhm.
basically, the application process is where we're at. And we were given a zoning application to go over and tweak it for the application for a homeowner or ourselves to submit for eligibility. In this case, it would be the committee would have to agree
Mhm.
that is eligible to go forward with the application. So the next process, part of it is just applying for it. And after that, Steve explained that there's another process where we have all the information which we gathered, which we will present. So basically, we just need to, I think, get the committee on board that this is
Yeah,
a
so-
worthy.
If you don't mind, so the idea being, because you're a committee, the subcommittee on its own can't come in and say, here are the properties that you should take application on. You need to do that as a committee, and at least
They can recommend it to us. But
they
we
can
need to
recommend it
approve
to you. So even for the point of putting an application in, I think it would be appropriate for this body to say, yes, we want the application submitted. And to do that, you might need some information to make that decision. My recommendation would be that once the application is filled out, you all review that, just say, yep, we're good with that. Let's submit that application. And then at your next meeting, that would be the opportunity then for the hearing related to whatever property it is. And that'll give, and I say the next meeting, depending on when it's submitted, if it's submitted within a timely manner that we can do so, then we would go through the whole zoning approach, just like we do any other zoning case. The difference is, instead of the zoning hearing board hearing the case and making a decision, this body would hear the case and make a recommendation to the board based on that. And there's another formal hearing at the board. But so it gives you an opportunity to put your case together, know what you want to say, and then be prepared to say it in front of the board. I hope that didn't derail what you were trying to say, but made it, did I say something that?
No, that's exactly. And so right now, I got confused, and basically then tonight we are just going forward with the application
Yeah, so tonight.
process, because we haven't
tonight-
turned it into you even.
Yeah,
that's
right.
why I
So
said-
tonight, you as a committee would say, yes, let's submit an application on, I believe there, you have actually two properties here, if I'm looking at it right. Is that right? Or is it?
Well,
no.
there's only one property on the agenda.
William Lewis House that is going to be separate. That's class 1, and that's not, the homeowner is actually doing that. So,
Oh, okay.
but we toured it, and Frank
I
gathered
got you. I got
information on
you.
it,
So
so
the
we had it.
homeowner is actually submitting that one,
Yes.
not you as a group.
Yes, thank
Gotcha.
God.
Okay. Yeah. So, yes. So you
for-
actually
yeah.
have further down on
Under
your
new
agenda,
business.
8.1,
Yeah.
under new business. an
That's under new
opportunity.
business.
Yes. And at that point, the only thing that really needs to be done is for you to, to make a decision as a board, whether or not you want to have an application submitted on your behalf.
Mhm.
I don't think you need a full presentation tonight to do that. I just think you need enough information. Do you think it makes sense based on the house? And you all may have enough information without having any additional information shared by your subcommittee, or your subcommittee may need to give you some information to get you to that point.
Well, we'll address that when we get to it.
Yeah.
On with your subcommittee report.
So basically, as I said, the William Lewis House, that application, we met with the homeowners, will be for the class 1, and they have a lot of that already in the making, in the works. So I gave them the list of 6 criteria for that part of our ordinance, separate from being on the national register, which they want to do, but that isn't necessarily, doesn't have to occur for them to become class 1 in our ordinance.
Right.
So that, we toured the house, gorgeous, and totally period, perfect. So that homeowner will take care of that, and then we'll follow up with him. The Horace Lewis house, as we said, we visited, Frank did an extensive physical valuation of that. So he has that all written up, and then I met with the granddaughter of Horace at the Newtown Firehouse, because in researching it, found out that Horace was, it was his father Dilwyn, and then Horace, the first presidents of the Newtown Square Fire Company, which made it a lot more relative to its importance. And
Right.
then I tried to get them involved, the whole history in the firehouse. It's done a great job. Preston Tyrell. So she has an extensive history on William Lewis and on her grandfather,
Mhm.
Forrest. It gives a lot of what he did in the town and how important he was. And so it's given us a lot more information than I even had originally about the house. And so I'm compiling that, and Frank, I guess that's, unless you have a question about that, that's where we're at right
Mhm.
now. And basically trying to figure out the process, because to be honest with you, I was getting a little confused myself, and like, because we're doing it anew, it's not been done. We
Well,
don't.
We're all sort of feeling our way through.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, okay, I have all this, and then I realized we didn't need all that information. We need it yet. We need it in the process, but not at this particular
Right.
meeting. We just, so if you had questions when we get to that part, we can
Right.
discuss. And Frank, did you want to mention anything?
Yeah, well, since we don't have a guideline as to what we're supposed to do, I made one. And so it rates everything from its original, it's as it should be, or it's original, it's been restored, or it's been replaced, and it gives you the different conditions. That's what this paper is. When you go through the report that I put together, it actually breaks down everything in the house. So it tells you what the trim was like, what the condition of the floor was, what the rafters were. Goes through the whole house, there's a whole bunch. At the end of it, if we have comments that need to be done, there's a summary that tells you all that's good, bad, and ugly about the house. So it's really inclusive, but since I don't have one, I made one, and this is my system. And if we have another one, I'd be happy to adjust to whatever we need. I only gave you one page. One report has like 13 pages in it. And so and I didn't even get inside the house. That was the Horace Lewis one. The other house was done and the restoration was magnificent. The one that's looking to get on the registry. He did a great job. And the house was original, his floors and ceilings, and they stripped all the paint off of it. Everything they did over the last 300 years. And you went through the house, it was, you thought you were in 1705. You know, no, it wasn't 5. They built it in 1708. Felt like 1715. You know, it was really, really nice. He had the irons in the kitchen that he could cook with. He had the beehive oven, and his furniture was all period correct too. Really beautiful house, even though that doesn't have anything to do with historical. That went way above and beyond. So, but on the Horace Lewis, I have broken down the outside conditions, but the house itself, the structure is exactly as it was. The additions that are on the house are exactly as they were. It just that when they painted it, they painted over oxidized paint. And so there's no way to paint with it here. So that's why it's all peeling paint, but the wood underneath is still original. And the only spot that I have a problem with it was in one of the rear additions. The rafters have sagged, but it's not an impossible fix for the house. So we'll go through it, but I was looking for some input if this is acceptable. And
I think that if your committee think that, you know, one of the things about being the first out of the gate as the members on this committee, you get to kind of set the direction. And so this is, you know, I don't see anything wrong with this on first glance. You know, I haven't spent a lot of time with it, but what I'm looking at, I think seems seems to make sense.
I guess my only question is, aren't we confined to the exterior of the homes?
You're confined for the purposes of
Historical.
of what you're doing. Now, if a property owner has you come in and you see value because you've gone in, I don't think that hurts anything, but you are making your decision based on the exterior of the home.
Yeah, I guess my related question is whether the official form that we use should be confined to the exterior, since that's all we can judge on for the purposes of this committee. And, yes, have the interior form if the owner invites us in and asks for it, but keep it as a separate form so that we don't get into a situation in the future going down the pike where these two things get merged and somebody who hasn't been in on the ground level like we have says, oh, we've got to do both, when the fact of the matter is we don't.
No, I think that's a valid
That's fine.
point, yes. Because if that's the case,
Yeah, and I think you could take that interior piece and, put on the piece that this is, optional at the homeowner's request. And then, because obviously if you get a place that the interior is just phenomenal, and it sounds like the Lewis William House is, you may find, or is it William Lewis House? Did I say that right?
that's, yeah.
Yeah. You may find that, it's the difference between a 2 and a 1. It may be the piece that takes it to just another level.
And it might be information that the owner would want to have.
Yeah, and it may be information that, would be good for any application to the level of the county and or for purposes of grants to try to help in the future for any house like that. You could share that information.
Would the interior of the home play a role when the owner objects? Based on their ability to go in and ours not? Or does that really not always play a role?
I think that the argument could be if the owner comes in and says, here's the reason why it's not feasible, and they go in and show you the inside of the house,
If
and
they
the only thing that's standing is the exterior walls. And if you look at it and all of a sudden you go, well, the exterior walls look great, but if you take into account that there's nothing on the inside and to go back and do the inside would be cost prohibitive, that may come back. But from your standpoint, what we're looking at typically is the exterior value of the house. The idea there being that if Mr. Smith buys a house that has historic value and from the exterior and goes in and tears out all of the plaster and puts up drywall, that doesn't keep the house from still having historical value from the exterior. That we don't want to make it so that somebody says, I don't want to live in the house because, the house from 1600 was just too rough for anybody to want to live in today. And then it becomes unusable. But it's, at the same time, if somebody had done an upgrade on the inside and it was such, it may not add historic value to the house, that the exterior would still be valuable.
But having the opportunity to go through the interior that we did, I could see that he has the windows that didn't have a balance in it. You put it up and you put the peg in it, and he had the pegs as they should be. I could see that there were clinch nails when they put the
Yeah.
doors and stuff together that you can't evaluate from the outside. It was very helpful to see both. And that he let us in, it was good.
Sure, and I think for the purpose of,
Yeah.
particularly if somebody's going for a class 1, I mean, I think that probably helps solidify those kind of things. I don't know that it's required, but I
Yeah.
think it helps to solidify it.
Well, and Frank has a good point in that there are some architectural elements that affect the outside of the property that you can't see from the outside of the
Correct.
property.
Like the wavy glass,
Yeah.
you're looking at a window, you can't, if you're really close to it, but you can't see the second floor. When you're on the second floor, you can see,
Yeah,
and that as we went through, even when he had to take out stuff, he had panels that he had that were original, that he duplicated the wood and he put it together. It was, and it was magnificent. It was-
Okay, hang on.
you gotta-
With the other house, I think the issue would be demolition versus
Yeah.
not. It's more concrete.
Yeah,
And that would be where this comes, oh, no, we can't save this house. It's, and we would have to then show that, yes, it
Yeah.
could be.
yeah, that's correct.
And why it's significant to the town
Yes.
to maintain that.
Well, it
Right.
sounds like the bottom line on this, if I can kind of summarize, is that our form for the purposes of decision-making should focus on the exterior of the house, but we also will have the form on the interior of the house. And because of these other related issues, we will encourage, but not require, the owner to allow us into the house in order to inspect those elements of construction that can't be fully evaluated from outside. Make sense?
I was under the impression that our purview was for the basis of what we can evaluate on. What can be seen from the public way.
That's the exterior.
That's the exterior, yes.
Specifically, it's. the
So what I'm
exterior,
saying is that the
the
interior would be optional and really up to the owner.
My report is made where it has an exterior page and it has a roofing page, has a page for the grounds that are around the house. Where they maintain whether as they should be. So that does it, but it does, on the plumbing, I just said that we didn't have plumbing in 1900, we didn't have electric till 1910. We didn't have heating systems that really worked until like 1919, So I didn't evaluate any of those. I'm just saying it doesn't fit in if it's before that time. And that gives us our 75, 80 or 100-year range. But the report is broken down that you could do it either way. So if we get in, it makes a fuller view of what we need. When we apply for the thing, we'll just use the exterior. And I can separate them out in a summary if they need to be.
And also
Since I
remember,
don't have a report.
it's those who object versus those who don't.
Yeah.
And you're going to majority or not, because they're going to be the ones that are going to say, oh, yes, I want to file the application, because there's no way we can go around filing applications for everybody. That is what came to my attention as I'm thinking about this. It's reaching out to people. Do you want to apply for eligibility in the ordinance? It's a daunting task when there's that many homes. Picking the ones that are slated for demolition by a developer.
Yeah.
There's not going to be many that are left, but they may come up when the home changes hands. And then somebody buys the property and then wants to develop on the properties. Because some of these properties are on large tracts near the lake, Springton Reservoir. And so there are some. But I just found that there'd be a lot of, that's a lot of the legwork, I'm thinking, getting the applications and getting people to file the applications and finding out, reaching out to all those people. For this one, kind of, we're doing it. I don't know, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, anything else from you guys? We good?
Good.
Okay, outreach subcommittee, would you like to?
Give a little update. We talked and targeted 3 nearby communities. We reached out to 2 and we found that actually living through the layers of front door of the government was tedious. But I believe at this point, thank you. I believe at this point, we have talked to Haverford at some extent in the last week. And we were trying to get through to East Goshen. I sat in on the Haverford Historic Commission meeting last night. And learned a few things. They're very, very approachable, very open to us being able to reach out to them periodically with questions as we come up with things that we have not done. In talking to them about how they brought their properties into protection under their ordinance. Their first batch was, as I suspected, they brought them in as their entire historic resource document. At the time they passed their ordinance, they were a little baffled why we were not doing the same and trying to bring everything in at once in a mass group rather than trying to do it in small chunks. As that would give a much larger base to have some protection over. The second group, they did with a single mailing, and they gave them the option of a checkbox as to whether you were interested or not interested.
Hmm.
And in doing that, they found that they only got 3 out of 12
That we're interested?
that were interested. So that may not be the way to do it. I told them I told them I did not know why we had not brought everything in at the time of the ordinance, although I suspected that it might be a difference in how our townships were based,
Mhm.
them being a class 1 and us being a class 2. But I did say that I would pass along to the committee that they strongly recommend doing it in a batch rather than one at a time.
I just a quick, I think I can answer that and understand I'm giving you a legal answer from my interpretation from our solicitor. So if I get it wrong, I apologize, but my understanding from the solicitor was that had we had an area of the town that we said was historic, like a square section or a specific neighborhood, we probably could have done that pretty easily when we passed it. But because we were dealing with individual properties that are literally pretty much spread out throughout the town, it makes it harder to just say that this is a historic district, because it's really an overlay zoning that we had.
Yep.
And so in order to do the overlay zoning, we had to go back and we would have had to have hearings on every one of those. And if we had done that, I believe you have 103 or something like that on your list that you're talking about at some point that might be considered as properties that would be historic. We probably would still be trying to figure out how to get the ordinance passed. And so instead of doing that, it was recommended that we start this way and that you be able to add them as you went. One, based on people coming forward and saying they wanted it, and two, there is a way to add them based on the township saying these ought to be on there as well, or you saying that they ought to be on there as well. So we have both in there. And it really came down to the fact that because it was so spread out, we would have had to have almost 100 individual hearings to be able to do it.
That was my understanding from your previous
Yep.
explanation. It also may be a matter that they did it 10 or 15 years ago and the environment has changed since then.
And let me just say, and I think we have a very strong solicitor who has spent a lot of time studying, particularly second class township code, which is what we are. We're a township of the second class. But this actually falls under the state code for historic commissions. Just because a community does something doesn't necessarily mean they did it right. And so we deal with that all the time. And we'll get an ordinance and he and I will go through it, and usually him first, but one of us will question whether or not we can actually do what it says in the ordinance. And so we try very hard to make sure that we don't spend time in court fighting our ordinances. The goal is to let us get through and do what we need to do, not spend time fighting on whether or not it's right or wrong.
I researched the East Goshen Township. They're a second class township just like ours, so I thought it was a little bit more relevant to get more information. They did the same thing. They brought in all of their historical resources in 2001. That was when their ordinance began. So they have extensive meeting notes published on their website. So in my leisure time, I was perusing their minutes and found, but they started back in 2007. So I did find some other information regarding outreach, public community involvement that they were into, and things that'll be helpful when we discuss ways to communicate with the community.
To what extent have these two townships had their residents come forward saying, gee, we want to participate in this, as opposed to the township having to go out and beat residents over the head saying this would be good for you?
Because they brought most of them in, I haven't come across any information regarding residents coming forward and requesting.
When I initially sent out the letters about the ordinance, I sent probably 80, 90, hand-delivered some that the post office couldn't find, that I found quite easily. And held meetings, and there was, I don't think, one objection. And they were going to be on the ordinance. There wasn't any objection. So I don't, my personal feeling, it's a done deal. So the application process has to be, I think, easy, user-friendly, and just send them out and apply and make it simple for them. And I don't think there'll be a problem. I think we'll get them to do
Yeah,
it, but we
most of
have to
them,
do it in a lot. So that's why I'm thinking the application is a big part of it, and them understanding it. It was simpler then because they all just said, oh yeah, they didn't even have questions half of them.
And that seems consistent with
Yeah.
what I got from Haverford. They have had a few cases where they had people fight them tooth and nail, but
Mhm.
they said that for the most part, residents in these type of homes are open to it.
Mhm. And ours isn't real restrictive, so
But if you give them a
that's even
checkbox,
easier.
they'll check out.
Yeah.
So,
Do either, I haven't studied Haverford's, nor have I studied, is it East Goshen?
Yeah.
East Goshen's. Do either one of them incentivize in any way?
It didn't look like it from their ordinance. I perused that as well.
Okay.
They had a lot more detail
Mhm.
regarding resources and what they couldn't say about construction or demolition, but there didn't appear to be any incentives.
Okay,
yeah, Haverford, when they initially did it, my recollection was there was not a lot of incentivizing. You know, they said, we'll be a resource for you, we'll be here for you. But beyond that, they just said, do it for history, do it for the right reason.
yeah, okay.
Did they have any prevention for their class twos on demolition? Did you happen to see their demolition part of their ordinance?
They have the same type of slowdown mechanisms that I believe we have.
Mhm.
I think they started as a demolition prevention, but now they're pretty much just looking at things when renovations go through or roofs get put on to try to keep people, if not strictly in line with historic materials, at least to consider it. They were reviewing one last night and it was mostly, this is what's been considered. And they pretty much either yay or nay it, which goes back to zoning. And I think in this case, there was nothing that they were concerned about the renovation. It was an interesting process to watch.
Is
but
theirs limited to the exterior or do they
They're
concern
they're-
themselves with the interior?
No, they can't look at interior. They're realistically looking at what can you see from the right of way? So if you have a house that sits back, it's pretty much the front only.
Mhm.
When I was sitting in on the original proposed ordinance, the question I had to them was, what are you gonna hold the owner to? Because their language was very vague. And in the case of my building, I asked them, well, you're gonna hold me to 1832 or 1890 or 1935? Or like it was when I bought it, when it had no windows. And they never really gave me a satisfactory answer. So there's quite a bit of subjectivity in their ordinance.
In Lower Marion, they say you can't do anything on the outside. But my daughter had an 1855 house. When I went in, they said, that's a historical house. I thought it was 1902. They said, no, it's 1855. It was the first house in the neighborhood. And that's historic. So you can't do anything on the outside. But we redid the kitchen and I put air conditioning in it. It renovated the whole inside of the house, because that's what she wanted. So outside has to stay the same.
It has to stay preserved. You know, maintenance and
Yeah.
things to keep it.
Unless
Or
the
bring it
homeowner
back
is
to
willing
that.
to pursue a legal case.
Mhm.
We
Or
want
large
shade-to-shade
variants,
windows.
because they tend to do that too. When they want to.
Okay, anything else from? The
I looked
outreach
into- I talked to
subcommittee?
them a bit also about outreach, what they've done,
Mhm.
and their list of what they've done was surprisingly light. Although they indicated that outreach at the historic Township Day, which we have a similar one,
Right.
tends to work.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna look into that further, what other townships have done, because I think there is more that can be done.
Mhm.
Their brochure was incredibly simple, just a basic trifold with, you know, here's the history of the ordinance, here's what we're here for,
Mhm.
here's what's going on with it.
Is,
which-
is there any chance, that, this commission can get copies of that brochure so we
I
can
have,
see it?
I have their current one. They're in the process of updating it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I will share that.
Wonderful. Does East Goshen have a brochure or anything like that?
I do not know yet, but their meetings are the second Thursday of every month. So I can attend that one next month to see if
And
there-
smile sweetly at
if
them.
anyone attends. There seem to be a lot of open chairs on their commission, so we'll see how that comes out.
Right, okay. And now on to new business. Discussion and possible action regarding the application of the Horace Lewis House to be registered as a Class 2 property. I'd like to start by asking exactly what are we trying to accomplish here today?
If I can, I think if you are wanting to start moving the process forward, the goal would be that you would walk away today and as a group have agreed that you as a group should submit an application to the township that would be submitted to you for the purpose of letting you have a hearing and starting the process of allowing the house to become a Class 2.
So we need to be told a little bit about the Horace Lewis House so that we can decide that it's a good idea to go forward with an application.
You can start
So I
with
think probably most of us really don't know a whole lot about it.
Okay,
when it was built and all, right?
it's right next to the firehouse.
Mhm.
On
The new firehouse,
the old fire.
the old, oh, okay, I
The old
know the
firehouse.
house you mean. I know that.
Yeah, I've driven by it for 30 years and
Yeah.
didn't see it until I went over and inspected it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, the original house is 1850, it's stone, it's a Georgian, just like the John West house is. And it was about that same size. They put a first edition on, and the first edition was almost the exact same size of house, all frame on the outside edge. And it went out from it, and they put a second and a little third one in the back. From the outside, the structure is the same as it was. They used German siding. They didn't start using German siding till the 1880s. So the addition that's put on there could be 1900, could be 1910. I never put on German siding, and I started work construction in 61. So they stopped using it by that time. So it's an old building all the way around. The structure from the outside shows no deterioration where water's been getting in, it's falling down, it's deteriorated. So it would be structurally fine to maintain that building. The problem is the man who owns the building, I think he owns everything around it. And if you're a developer, your idea would be to move the house out of the way and it'd be better as a parking lot for him.
Hmm.
Okay, well, that's why they have the historical commission. We don't want it to be a parking lot.
What's the house? Is anybody living in the house at this
No,
point?
it's been empty. It's been empty for a long time.
It's what?
It was last use, I believe, is
Mhm.
Hmm. Hmm. And does it look like it's been empty for a long time or?
Just-
I had the impression, just remembering what I saw driving past it, that it looked a little down at the mouth.
The reason is, when you paint a building. And the painter comes over and he says, I want $5,000 to paint the building. And you say you want it for 3,000, the guy eliminates the preparation.
Mm,
And so then he put the paint on and the paint peels everywhere because it was still oxidized. To clean the building up, it has to be power washed, remove the original oxidation they should have taken off, and you paint it, it'll be a magnificent building.
mm.
So, yeah, it does look tired because somebody economized. Economized.
The library used it in the past for their book sale to house
Oh,
books.
okay.
That was the last time I
Mhm.
remember it being used. Yes, they would
Mhm.
just load the books in there because it was empty.
Right.
But we were allowed at that point, I guess.
But structurally, it looks good. Little back roof, couple of rafters sag, and you're getting water in there, but that won't affect that much.
Mhm.
The structure, the roof looks great, the outside looks great. The masonry walls are great. There's only 2 of them that are exposed. Because the other ones in the frame are 3 of them that are exposed. The structure looks great.
I'm just curious, this probably isn't relevant to our decision or not, but if we go forward with the application on it and it gets listed as a class 2 property, does the owner then have to clean it up at all, or does he just have to keep it from falling apart?
Would assume the second.
Yeah, I think the way the ordinance is written, he can't have demolition by neglect. Like you could force him to.
That's right, there was demolition by neglect in
So
there, yeah.
there, you have that piece against it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has to fix it up. He doesn't have to restore it.
He doesn't have to put new paint on it,
That's correct, as long as it's not demolition by neglect.
right? But if pieces start falling off the building, that's something else again.
It can be, and also that would be where the other piece of its history part would come forward, and interest in preserving by maybe groups that are somehow connected
Mhm.
to the family of the founder of Friends Meeting and the
Mhm.
president of Newtown Square Fire Company. So what I'm saying, so I have talked with the fire company people, and I'm still talking with them just to get support or interest, because I don't know how much they knew about the
Mhm.
house. So I mean, that's another thing. If its use can be, that's an outreach kind of thing too, finding someone that could put use to it. And then the developers, that when you talk to a developer, well, look, we have people that would do this, or we have people that would do that, or we could
Mhm.
turn it into this. To maintain the business district. And he's connected to the first family, William Lewis, that goes way back.
Mhm.
So that, that history part's solid. So yeah, it's more than what is the use, because it is kind of right in the middle, and I know he wants to take down everything else around it.
Mm,
But then there's other buildings on the corner. The one that you see right on the corner with the bays, we looked at that as well. And I've pretty, without going in, we've pretty much seen that that's at least 100 years old.
Yeah, it's based on.
So there's another building that could conceivably be a
With the design.
class
for it.
2.
Hmm.
It's some kind of little astrology, maybe.
oh, it's the astrology shop, yeah.
It's been many things, but it's in many of our photographs, and one going
Yeah.
back with the horse and carriage in front. So, and so I worked with fire companies, they had photos as well. So there's another piece that, you know, could conceivably be a class 2. Should the person want to, I don't know, it gives you a little more leeway if you look at the whole business area as a historic little piece and preserving, you know, what's still left of the
Would-
facades.
Do you think that one of the things that we might need to get involved in down the pike with this building would be helping the owner figure out how to put it to some kind of good adaptive reuse?
Sure. I mean, if they're open to that.
Yeah,
I mean, I think in the short run, the horse house certainly ticks enough of the boxes to make it clearly eligible as a class two. And I think in the short run, putting some protection over it to at least slow down the potential removal of it
Mhm,
makes sense.
yeah,
The other house, it may just be an old house. I don't know.
It might be, it also might be a tool.
You know,
Part
it
of
might
the
be
tool.
interesting. But I think we should probably
You can
focus,
have that one, but we'll take
focus on
this
the
one.
easy one.
yeah.
Or at least the one that easily makes sense.
Yes, yes, that was just a combination thing for when you're working with a developer, when there's more than one, sometimes you have one that you're willing to.
Well,
might
does
make it
somebody
more-
want to make a motion to move forward with an application on this? That's our next step, right?
All we need is the information. We got the paper,
Right,
we just need the names to fill in.
Well, we have the application that we were tweaking. It was a zoning hearing application that you gave us with some changes that would be for this application, which I was finding probably have some questions about. that.
well, if we decide, if we make a motion to move forward with an application.
Right.
Then the actual application itself would be submitted the final, next month when we meet.
Or
right.
can we do it between now and then?
You could do it between now and then, unless you want,
We'll have-
unless this committee wants to approve the application. And you are going, to like, if you're okay with us, you know, with the subcommittee and myself working on the
Oh,
application.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and then.
No, that's not a problem.
And then
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
want to submit that, I think the thing would actually just be an issue of timing.
Okay,
So how quickly can we do it? Because there are some requirements for this in that we have to notify the surrounding property owners, and in this case, the property owner, that there's an application in on his property about that. And so,
well, then I guess our motion should be to authorize the subcommittee to go forward with the application on this property.
correct.
Somebody want to make that motion? Right,
Forward on the zoning application,
go forward on the application of the Horace Lewis house.
yeah, condition for zone.
No, I don't think it's a petition. for zoning.
Eligibility for the
Format.
eligibility. We're calling it eligibility for the historic preservation.
I think it's for moving on the application to register it as a class 2 property
Register.
is what you're wanting to do, I believe.
Register, okay. As class 2.
So we're moving to authorize the subcommittee to move forward with that.
Yep.
Okay, does somebody want to formally make that motion?
Thank you.
Frank is making it. Second,
A second.
Kathy will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved.
Alright.
Okay. On to old business. Discussion and possible action regarding 2023 Historic Preservation Commission goals. And we pretty much, I think, went over that in our last meeting. Trying to see what we had in the minutes here. Oh, 2023 goals will include approving 2 to 3 properties as class 2. Educating the community about the Historic Preservation Commission through publicity and events. Public outreach at large. Do we want to include anything else like, massive mailings to the township or anything?
Probably more applications. I would say we really have to push the application process.
Yeah, I think we were unclear.
Yeah,
that
so
process
now
is
that
gonna
we're
look
kind of
like.
now, and seeing that it's gonna be like. Bundling them is a really good idea, so I think that would be.
So
A
another,
process to get out there and get those applications.
so another goal would be to bundle significant numbers of applications and push them out the door or
Or
something.
get them to the homeowners that, yes, that are responsive, and as you. mentioned the
Chris?
checkbox, Chris, the checkbox really didn't work. They didn't get many responses, kind of like I didn't get
The
many.
ability to opt out was, it seems like was used a lot,
So a lot of people opted out.
or simply didn't reply, which was taken as an opt-out.
Right, sure.
Yes, it's,
The moral being we should avoid check boxes.
We should avoid making it an obvious way out.
Yeah.
And perhaps if we do a mailing to all of the initial proposed properties and start bundling them by the favorables, and then
mhm.
circling back to the others later.
And maybe do two mailings, the first one being a heads up. An educational kind of mailing, and the second one, a follow-up one. Are you interested now that we've given you all this good information?
Can we include an application in a mailing?
Hmm?
Yeah, I think that's what we would do, include the application with an
Yeah, I would think you could use the first heads up mailing
explanation.
as a way that those who are particularly interested could express that.
Hmm,
You know, you don't necessarily have to have a hard call for action. But if you have an easy call for action, you may pick off those who are particularly interested in being listed, and then put a more firm call for action on a second mailing.
I don't know that I'd put an application in. I think that would scare people.
Well, that's part of the problem that we're gonna have anyway, is that people notoriously, oh, too much trouble, I don't want to do it. That's why including them is always the easiest way to do it. But now that we have to take them, the application, it's almost like it has to be simple. It has to be, that's why the application to me is a big part of it being very simple, to the point.
Well,
They're just starting the process and they are saying, I want my house listed,
I
and
agree.
they
it
would
need-
probably do it.
I agree it needs to be simple, but I wouldn't include it with a communication asking them if they're interested or not, because even a simple application is going to be more than a single sheet of paper. And people will look at that and their eyes will glaze over and they just won't do it. Trust me. they won't.
Right, I know. So-
Should there be another informational meeting
Yeah.
where applications are
like
then
that, yeah.
available?
So another goal is to establish the procedures for making this all happen. Letting the secretary write this down.
Have a meeting with sandwiches, they'll all show
I tried that. Well, no, I only had meetings for those who had questions or objected. And I rarely got more than 2 people just with questions,
Yeah,
or 3. And I visited many people and I didn't get any objections. That's why I'm saying that part of it, I don't think is going to be the problem.
no, you're
It's the
right.
filling it out and actually going and saying, could you fill this out without, if we just wait for people to do it, you know, you're probably not going to get
No.
many.
No. Well, that's why I wouldn't send it with communication like that.
Do we know,
Because we may never see it.
I mean, do we know some of the information, the basic information that we would want on the application in advance?
Well, this is the application that Steve gave to Frank and Melissa and I, and we were then to tweak it, which I will turn back and they will fit it into the right format for this. So it's to register as a class 1 or 2, I guess you could do.
I think it would be
Historic
good
resource.
if at the next meeting. In addition to telling us that you've submitted the application
Mhm.
for the Horace Lewis House, it would be good if you brought back to us for the information of the committee the final cleaned up application that we're going to use so that we see the final form.
Sure.
So can you put that on the list for next meeting?
And then I probably have to talk with you. We have to go over the application because there weren't, a lot of things, but some I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Should I delete or not?
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress.
And it
it's,
this isn't really,
you know, and it's just when you get to the end of the progress, I think it would be good for everybody on the commission to see
it's a
it.
pretty simple application. Because that's the,
Yeah,
the work
sure.
comes in if it's an objection. And for many people, the homeowners putting it in there, nobody's gonna object.
No.
And the town and the supervisors will just probably pass it, so.
Okay, anything else that we need to add as goals? Okay,
You already read them.
Stephen, do we need to vote to add these as goals or can we just add them?
I think it would be helpful if there are goals that you're set on, that you, if you're prepared to pass them as what you want them to be, then I would argue, go ahead and pass them. If you want to take and have them maybe a little bit more refined by the next meeting, and that somebody's going to work on that, making them refined, then I would say all you need to say is these are the 5 things we want to refine for that purpose. And I don't think you need to take action. on
Okay,
that.
let's wait to nail them down in the December meeting. If we got.
But I think it would be helpful to put them in the SMART goal format, if everybody kind of understands what I'm talking about when I say that.
Yep.
A what?
A SMART
goal.
goal format, and you know, that the goal is specific,
She
measurable.
knows what it is, so
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
So, yeah, you know, and basically, we're just saying it's a goal is specific, a goal is measurable. A goal is achievable, a goal is realistic, and it has a time frame,
Okay.
and that's the SMART goal format.
Yeah,
And we're
okay.
trying to move all the committees to having SMART goal formats.
Right.
Okay. Discussion and possible action regarding the 2023 meeting schedule. Stephen, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, so what we need to do is go ahead and get you a consistent time and date that you're meeting. I would like to propose that it would be the 4th Tuesday of the month.
The fourth
Tuesday
Tuesday?
of the month. And the reason being is that would fall on the same night as the Bartram Bridge meeting, which is also another historic meeting that happens. And it would allow for our staff to be able to double up on a night, and that's what we're trying to do as much as possible. I think that if you want to stay at 5 o'clock, that works. If you wanted to move to 5:30, I think that would also work.
Well, fourth Thursday is fine with me. I'm
Tuesday.
open to either.
Tuesday.
Said Tuesday.
No,
Fourth Tuesday.
Fourth
Did I
Tuesday,
say, third? I thought I
yes,
said.
sorry.
Tuesday.
Tuesday is better than
Okay.
Thursday.
yeah,
Mhm.
what?
Tuesdays are better than Thursdays.
Yeah, it's,
Just going with that.
yeah, it's,
So we actually already have 2 meetings on the 4th Thursday. So it's,
no, I just
It's
misspoke. Forgive me.
You have meetings,
Um,
so many.
Could we move it to 5:30? Did anyone?
That's okay with
object to
me.
that?
Depends on how everybody feels about that.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine.
Thank you.
and I really don't need an action. The board will actually take and set, the board of supervisors will actually take and set it, but as long as I have an agreement,
Mhm.
that's what I need tonight.
So that would be 1, 2, 3, January 23rd, if I'm looking at this correctly.
January.
Well, because
January 24th is 4th.
Oh, yes, January 24th. Right. I was not looking at it correctly. Thank you.
Yeah, it would be the
So-
24th, the 28th of February, the 28th of March, and then so on.
And do we meet through the summer?
Your ordinance, I believe, requires a monthly meeting.
I think it does, yes.
Yes.
No rest for the weary.
I mean, I'm actually have asked the solicitor to take a look at that and potentially at least once we get going and come back and see if that can be adjusted back. If you don't have anything before you, I don't know that would be a requirement that you meet every month, you know. At least, you know, it may be you have to meet at least 6 times a year or something like that, but
Do all applications have to be brought here?
If-
Homeowners applications that they submit to the
So
township.
if somebody were to submit an application that was calling for demolition of a class 2 or a class 1 property, it would have to come here. And that would be a reason why you would have to meet, like you would.
I meant for application for class 1 distinction for.
Before-
A
Yes.
homeowner wants to be on the ordinance, have their home.
The way I read the ordinance, it all comes through you the first time and then goes to the Board of Supervisors for final approval.
So they can submit their applications anytime and then you collect for the month, anybody who's
Yes.
submitted one.
We,
Bring it.
we would have a period of
You'll give
time.
them to-
We would treat it just like a zoning application
Okay.
because we have to notify the surrounding property owners
Right.
that you're doing, that you're having a hearing on this. I mean, there's like lots of steps that have to happen. We have to make sure that we have to treat it, as I understand it, pretty much like a zoning case.
Okay.
And so the only thing I don't know is, do we have to post it like we do a zoning? So there's some steps that we have to make sure get done. And that's the reason why I say there might be a time frame that drives that. In other words, if I have to advertise 2 weeks prior, which I think we do, if this application's submitted on the 20th of this, like, let's say your meeting is the 20th of December, if I recall right. If an applicant keeps, and it's easy for somebody else to say, if an application was submitted the 13th, there may not be enough time for us to do all the things that needed to be done administratively to have it on your agenda so that you could take action on it. Because
A date would be helpful for us too, to know that.
we
in
would
case we
have
want
to
go
do
the
that.
Homeowner
We'll-
and say,
we'll
get
give-
your application in.
When we get your application,
Yeah.
we will put together on the application, how far in advance, how many days in advance the application has to be submitted prior to your meeting.
So are we meeting at 5 or 5:30?
5:30.
I think,
5:30, is that good for everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it works for me.
The one thing I will say to that really does limit you to about an hour and 15-minute meetings, so that we have room for the 7 o'clock meeting to start.
mhm.
So, and under normal circumstances, I think that's fine.
I'll make sure we get done.
Yeah.
Everybody comes in. Go.
Okay. Then I guess our last item of business under old business has to do with the historic preservation ordinance review. The commission members' terms of office. Stephen, you're going to tell us how long we're here for.
I know I was. And I looked here and it looks like I left that sheet upstairs, so I will have to send that out to each one of you. I apologize. You were all appointed for a period of a term. So the terms for this, I believe, are 4-year terms, if I remember correctly. And then the way that works is each one of you had, so many of you go off each year, and 1 year actually has 3 go off in order for that to work.
And this year is in fact our first year, right?
Yeah, so the way it works is January is always our start point, no matter when the committee is set. So we don't end up in the middle of the year with one committee here, one committee there needing people. So I do know, if I recall, oh, wait a second.
I know my term is 2 years, so I remember that from the letter I got.
If somebody wants. to come on.
I think I know who at least
Oh,
goes
it's
off
Ken.
this year.
Anybody can resign. Anybody can resign.
But then make
Historic
their permit.
Commission, actually, only one was going off.
Pardon?
I believe only one person was going off, and that was Vince. And Vince was opting not to stay on. So
That's what I.
so because it's a 4-year term, not a 3-year term. So because it's 4-year, there was 1 this year and then 2 each year after. And I'll get that for everyone, just so you know. You will reorg. You'll reorg it as a group board in January. That's how we do that. And so, and we'll go through that. I'll walk you through that process when we get there. But basically you'll pick your chair, pick your vice chair, your secretary for 2023 at that time. Okay. So, for the ordinance itself, you wanted me to do a little bit more review with you. Is that correct?
If you feel we need it, be our guest.
Well, the only thing, let me just bring a quick thing. I looked at it briefly. There was a couple quick things that I would bring to your attention. We've talked pretty extensively about the Class 2 process. I didn't talk very much about the Class 1 process. So I just want to talk about that real briefly, mostly because there's some real specific steps that are there in it. I anticipate the fact that we have, I believe it's 5 Class 1s on the list. I can't imagine that any one of those 5 is going to come in and ask for a demolition permit anytime in the near future, just because of what we know they are. You know, 2 of the 5 are maintained by the township. Like I said, I can't imagine that we're going to do that. One of them is maintained by Dunwoody. I can't imagine that they're going to do anything that would move forward on that. And then the other one of the other ones you all know very well is the John West House. And the other one being, I think it's at St. David's Church, if I recall. And again, I don't think any one of those organizations is going to be doing that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I do think it's important that you understand your role in that process, that as something comes in for demolition, what is it that you're looking for? What is it? What can happen? We talked briefly about that 90-day delay that goes into effect once you've reviewed, and it gives everybody like a cooling off period so that there's a period of time for you to make recommendations, also a period of time for the Board of Supervisors to request more information. And so on pages 12 through pretty much the end of the ordinance, but at least through 12 and 13 of the ordinance, there's a lot of detail in there about how the permit would be not issued until certain things happen. And one of those is there's some recommendation that happens by you as the Historic Commission, and then there's a hearing that the Board of Supervisors agrees if the demolition is necessary or not necessary. And the board has the right to ask for certain things, like the amount paid for the property. It has the date and when the property was purchased, who it was purchased from, the pro forma on the financial statement prepared by an accountant or a broker as to why is it not cost, or why is it cost prohibitive to maintain the property? Appraisals. Are there any bona fide offers of sale that were out there that potentially could save the property? And then on to considerations why the owner as profitable or adaptable use of the property. But then comes to under section B on page 13 of the ordinance. It really gets into what your role is as the committee and as a commission. And I want to just real quick talk about that. You're going to be looking at it as the effect of the demolition on the historic significance and architectural integrity of the resource in question. And so, for example, if let's say it was determined that the building probably should be taken down for whatever reason, you may come back and say, but we should say this. Like you would have the authority to come back and give a recommendation as to what should be saved. So if there was some type of trim or maybe some type of mortar joint, or, I don't know what it would be specifically for, depending on what it was, whatever that structure was, there may be something. You would want to look at whether the applicant has demonstrated that they've considered all alternatives to demolition, and you might give suggestions. You would want to review the economic feasibility and adaptive reuse suggestions, alternatives to the demolition of the resource, and then the last ones here, whether the resource has in the current condition is a threat to public safety. maybe it's not. And so why would we tear it down? Has it been intentionally neglected? That becomes a big issue, are we not maintaining? And again, like I said, I think the 5 properties that are in question as class 1s, today, that's not an issue. Probably the only one that somebody might have said that about it when you drive by the bridge. Sometimes it looks like it's not always being maintained. I can tell you, we're getting ready to invest, pretty close to, $350,000 into the bridge over the next year. So we're between us and Willistown, we're each putting in about 125, plus we got a grant for another 100,000. So there's intent to do that. And then we spend money every year on the paper mill house. And I know, I believe Dunwoody's making an investment on the octagonal school. I know John Westhouse has had money spent on it over the last several years, the roof and things like that. I don't know a lot about the church, but I know they're maintaining it. And then finally, whether the retention of the resource would represent an unreasonable economic hardship. So there's a role for you to play, and it's important that you know that in case something comes in, you don't want to all of a sudden be in a position, what can we do? What can't we do? You should know that and just know it in that way. The thing that I want you to make sure is that the board is the one who actually makes the final decision. You're the recommending body. And so I just wanted you to be kind of aware of that in that way. So that's all I really wanted to cover quickly with you tonight. I don't have anything else major on there that I would make a major or in the ordinance that I would say we need to cover over a period of time again, but I'm happy to go over anything else that you would want to.
I just wanted to ask you one question on that. I know they're different for the class 1 and class 2. So what you were just talking about, class 1, in the end, the Board of Supervisors can deny the demolition on a class 1, correct?
Yes,
But not on a class 2.
that's my understanding.
Okay, that's what I just wanted, you may not understand that. But
Yeah,
shouldn't
they
be
can
able-
actually deny it if they
Yeah, I'm not-
feel like the applicant hasn't met, one of the requirements as to why it could be destroyed.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. That's very, very helpful.
And the other thing that I might make recommendation to you is, you might look at some properties if we think they're really significant. If there's not properties, but if a structure is really significant, is it feasible to be relocated within the property? If somebody comes in and says, I need that spot in order to make something work, can it be relocated on the property or to an adjacent property that would make sense? And look at that. And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't, but it is something to consider.
Okay. Well, we don't have any public comment. Items for the next agenda. We already put one on. Anybody have anything else they want to put on?
Take up all.
Pardon?
That's good for me. What, I don't have anything else.
Well, we know that we're going to be approving the Horace Lucas house. Anything else? Let me see. Did you get the public comment one that we talked about earlier?
Turn my mic off. The 2 things that I think about, you talked about tonight that for sure will be on the agenda. One would be finalizing your goals for 2020.
Right.
And then 2 would be consider the application on the.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so those will be going.
And I guess if you wanted to add a third one as a separate action item would be reviewing the application.
The form of the application
Form of the
itself.
application.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so you have those?
Yep.
Okay. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.